during the time when I was going through my divorce. One of the things that really truly supported not only my nervous system, but support some of the things that were beyond my control is astrology. I was definitely looking for an answer. This was when I'm almost on my knees. My marriage was falling apart. I was honestly fearing my life. I felt like I was trapped. I had some Vedic astrologers share that you are in a time period in your life where this is your Saturn return. Saturn is really one of the planets that rule your purpose, the things that come up that are meant to teach you your life lessons. It was that particular time frame for me that I needed to hear that you're going through a full transformation. That completely changed the trajectory for me to go from this victim pity party for one to this emboldened, empowered mama bear that I was, taking ownership and agency and real full sovereignty of the solace and the healing journey that I had within myself. Hey loves, do me a quick favor and hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are tuning into this. It helps grow the show more than you know. Thank you so much again and enjoy. I just want to start by really bringing you to this point now, where you are today. And wherever you are, however and whatever you are moving through. I feel like for me in the last few months, and quite honestly, this past year, I have been reevaluating and also reminiscing but more so reevaluating the types of relationships that I keep close in my inner circle. And why is that? Well, because typically, I mean, we're dishing it out on the brave table. Typically, my personality has been one to cast a wide net. So I am really good at being able to build friendships and connections anywhere in the world that I go to. Maybe it's because of my extroversion, maybe because I am a Cancer sun and we are just mama bear energy and we are nurturing and we are warm and we are open. But have you ever met someone that is the complete opposite of you, where they are cold to touch? And it happens. I travel a lot of places around the world. It's generally happens when you're in different places where you'll find people that are not as warm, or you don't have much in common, or you know that their energetic blueprint or their energetic imprint is giving you vibes of they are so reserved, they don't even want to share the same space with you. So what do? Are you one to try even harder, or are you one to say, okay, I see, I'm going to keep going? What if it's someone in your family circle? What if it's someone in your friend circle? Let's just say your friend, really close friend of yours, is starting to date somebody that completely has, and I want to say it in air quotes, but repulsive energy. What do? Well, this, my friends, is going back into our card today. I take personal responsibility for the actions, people, circumstances that I attract to teach me more about myself. I accept each moment with gentle compassion and love. So the high road, or your highest self, would probably say, you know what? Let's welcome them with compassion and love. Now, your ego might be butthurt, but is there something that can support really helping you dive into or soften your heart? Because if you're meeting people who are probably not the kindest, or are probably cold, or probably not your people, you might be saying, well, Neeta, why waste your time with them? Well, there are certain times where you actually can't. I've been in these family situations and I've gone to a bunch of weddings this summer where you are in relation with sometimes people that you're kind of not really jiving with. I mean, there was a season of life and a season in time when I was healing from my first marriage that I did not attend any family event. Why? Well, because A, I was healing from a divorce. I didn't want aunties and uncles to be like, oh, when are you getting married again? Or, oh, how's that love scene going? Or, love and meaning dating. Or, what else is going on in your life right now? Right. And so all of the questions would be so daunting for me. So I would avoid those types of community events. And you're probably thinking and watching this like, Neeta, but you're a lover of community. Yes, lover of community on my terms. Lover of community when the energy that I'm reciprocating is also reciprocal, right? Gone are the days where you need to be in an environment where you are not accepted, where you have to brace through it to be the martyr or the champion or the warrior. You don't need to go to those events that don't light you up, that, you're in those stuffy rooms and everyone's talking about things you don't necessarily relate to. Right? We've all been there where you're dragged to an event or you're dragged to a family function, right? You're doing all your spiritual healing work. You're doing all of the things that are aligning with your nervous system, yet you are pulled to go back. And maybe fine, you want to make your mom happy or your dad happy, or it's your second cousin's wedding. And so you think it's going to be great. But then when you get there, you're like, ooh, the questions, ooh, the judgment, ooh, the negativity, oh, the toxicity, oh, the all of the things that you have left. Now you're suddenly brought back. And I share this because many of you have asked in DMs or in our comments on either YouTube or on Instagram, how do you deal with these types of tensions where it is an obligation, a family obligation? It is the summer. There's lots of things going on without hurting anybody's feelings. And here's what I say to this. You will be going to things that will disrupt your nervous system, but do you have tools to come back to your nervous system? That's number one. Number two, now, while you may have changed because you have done the work, you have said yes to your own growth and your own healing, and some of those things that used to excite you probably don't excite you as much, or the types of people that you used to hang around with don't excite you all that much, or maybe your family doesn't excite you all that much because they have so much gossip and negativity and the judgment that they have, thinking that they're better than other people. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it in others where, it's a direct repulsion. So how do you be in a state of your own sovereignty where you are still coming from a place of love, even when you know the other person on the other side cannot handle how big your light is? You still keep showing up. You still keep sharing your joy. You still keep doing the rituals that keep you in alignment. And I preface this because many, many years ago, I didn't have some of these tools. And it was very hard when going through healing and deep trauma to then be sucked back into maybe your old group of friends or people that you grew up with, and you're trying to chart a new path. Well, if you're in this arena, if you're in this stage, if you just got through a breakup or a divorce, or maybe you're starting a new venture, career, job, relationship, you've moved cities, maybe you are feeling a little ungrounded. Well, what are those things that light you up? Number two, I'm going to share one of the things that really, truly supported me in helping me completely understand and flip the switch on what I was going through at the time to really support not only my nervous system, but support some of the things that were beyond my control. And that is astrology, and specifically Vedic astrology. I've been obsessed with Vedic astrology probably since my dad introduced me to this. It's probably one of the few episodes that I'm braving out, really pulling out my in the closet love affair for astrology and horoscopes. I remember when I was young and my dad would be at all of the, they see family parties, even our Filipino parties. And he would he would carry this book because he loved astrology as well. And he was one of those that would read other people's horoscopes. It was a hobby of his. And he did this during our family events and our family affairs. and people loved it. He was a Leo, so shout out to my dad wherever he is. I think I'm definitely channeling him this month, Leo season. But it would make him stand out, and he would create such a party, and people were so interested. Why? Because astrology or reading their horoscope, specifically Vedic, it gave them a sense of understanding of where they were in life. And if you were to ask me this way before, Vedic astrology is based on the science of astrology that the earth is tilted about 17 and a half degrees. And so it's quite specific. Whereas Western astrology really helps you understand traits of your personality. And some of you may have already watched or listened to my amazing episode with Deborah Silverman. She is the one human that not only do I love her delivery on making astrology fun, debunking all of these woo woo myths, but she's a psychotherapist. So the fact that she's been able to use psychotherapy and other traditional modes of healing while also wrapping into the different ways our horoscope signs or our astrological signs come up in the season and stage that we are meant to be. So let's just say you are in a period in Vedic astrology, you are in, and the most common or the most famous that one that everybody talks about is your Saturn return. Deborah has taught me how to, and her whole program has taught me how to really understand what that Saturn return means. And for me, this gave me the biggest solace of healing. And here's why. For years, I had to grapple with, really understanding. And I, of course, had a spiritual sense of and gratitude of why and how I lost my family so early. And yes, you can say in Vedic astrology, it was written. I had many astrologers told me during the time when I was going through my most painful moments, and this was going through my divorce. And even before my divorce, I had some Vedic astrologers share that this is probably not going to work out. And here's some of the reasons why. And of course, when you're in love and when you're young in love, you don't really believe in a lot of these things. And take for whatever you want out of this episode, right? We're braving different themes. And the reason why I felt compelled to share this with you all is because some of you might be looking for different answers, especially when you are at different crossroads. And I know for me, I was definitely looking for an answer. And this was when I was almost on my knees. My marriage was falling apart. I had this revolving door in my very, very new practice as an owner of my dental practice that I had just taken over. And I was honestly fearing my life. I felt like I was trapped, and I had a advisor at the time who was in quite a few dear friends who were in my inner circle that I could trust. And one of them shared their amazing Vedic astrologer that helped another family in crisis not too long in that time frame. And so I said, all right, what's the worst that could happen? And so I had a session with this person, and literally they said, you are in a time period in your life where this is your Saturn return. This is where you are going to, and now, of course, after really diving into that period of your Saturn return, the 2 or 3 years, it's actually 2 years before you hit 30. It comes every 7 years, but it usually comes in your late 20s and your late 50s, and it repeats itself every 30 years. It's usually marked by Saturn is really one of the planets that rule your purpose. And honestly, the things that come up that are meant to teach you your life lessons. And so I think that's so big because so many of us have life lessons in our lives that can make us or break us. And it was that particular time frame for me that I needed to hear that you're going through a full transformation. And he said, you may not believe me, but in a year from now, you're probably not going to be married. And I was so blown away because a lot of these things I took for granted when I was young, right? A lot of these things that we grew up with. I mean, I was exposed to yoga, meditation, chanting, satsang, all kinds of things. And now it's so cool when you go to yoga retreat, right? Or a kirtan, or as other people say, kirtan. But it's something that we grew up in, and that was our livelihood. And I think that it's really interesting that a lot of times you're exposed to these things, but it doesn't land with you until it's supposed to land with you. And so that part of my life, during a very, very low point, I was immersed in everything like this particular astrologer was saying. And lo and behold, they were right. And not only did they predict that, but they saw in different places in my chart where there was a time period where I did lose my mom. There was a time period where I did lose my brother. There was that particular time period where I did lose my father. And this was all laid out. And so, for those who are just coming into this thinking and wondering, what is this true? Is she nuts? Is she crazy? I know. I didn't believe it either, that it was so accurate. It also predicted when I was going to meet my now partner. And it really helped me understand and have empathy and compassion for the people that would come into my life that I had attracted because we didn't finish our karma out in either previous lives, and or that I was meant to learn something even deeper about myself. And so that completely changed the trajectory for me to go from this victim pity party for one to this emboldened, empowered mama bear that I was, taking ownership and agency and real full sovereignty of the solace and the healing journey that I had within myself. And only I can go through it. Just like you who are watching this on YouTube, or you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, you are the only one that can make sense of this. So, if you can think of what is happening in your life right now, maybe there are triggers with other people. Maybe there's stickiness, there's some sort of negative charge, there's a feeling of uncertainty, or a feeling of, oh man, that person slighted me, or oh, I just got cut off in traffic again by the same kind of car, and so then you make a meaning that these types of people are out to get me, or whatever the case is. I want to invite you to think, how did I attract this particular situation? Or what is meant for me to learn by this person or by this thing that I am triggered by? Because our triggers are just, they are flashing lights. They are like, hey, pay attention to me. Pay attention here. I'm literally giving you a mirror of someone that I think you should pay attention to. And you're like, well, how is that even possible? Well, what are you not allowing for yourself? Or how are you maybe being so open with your energy, or not being considerate towards your time, or not having the conversations you need to have? And this fully shifted because, yes, I started to say no more. I started to say no a lot more to those things that didn't light me up, because I understood that that period of time, I was supposed to be on a solo journey. According to the stars, according to where I was going to go inward. As a Cancer sun, sometimes that happens. You have your outward boldness, and in Vedic, it's interesting. In Vedic astrology, I am a double Sagittarius. In Western astrology, I am a double Capricorn. And so now, when I met Deborah earlier this past year, which I think it was just fascinating timing for us to get connected. And so if you haven't listened or watched her episode, I will link it in the show notes. But what was so fascinating with her program was, I wanted to know something other than Vedic astrology. And I wanted to know why so many people in the West are obsessed with Western astrology. And our horoscope. I mean, some of us read our horoscope on the daily, but even the way we make decisions, right? That, we're not going to do anything during Mercury retrograde, or letting go of things during the full moon or during the new moon. What are our intentions and what are we calling in? And I have done those rituals for such a long time. She's the only person that, while spending time with her, while really understanding how I could actually read my chart, which was fascinating, you can get a better understanding of how to mesh or open your arms up, or maybe close doors on people that may not be in alignment with you. And that is okay. You definitely have more of appreciation for those types of people. And you have more compassion for where they are at in their stage, in their journey of their life. So you actually have a very different kind of compassion for them, which is great because it really softens your heart in that way. And another thing that I really loved about being able to fully read my chart is, again, understanding how your Saturn return, and a lot of us go through this, but this period of 7 years, every 7 years, you have a birth and death cycle. And depending on the different planets and the different energies, and I don't remember every single one. So I'm not going to give you a masterclass on that. If you want that, I will link in the show notes how to get access to the interview that in the masterclass that Deborah is interviewing me live, and you'll see her read my chart live, and it's pretty wild and it's pretty accurate. And I had never had somebody. Vedic astrology is really good for predictions, but Western astrology, you really get to know somebody's personality, I mean, to a T. And it was, when she was reading it out, I'll link that, the replay. It was fascinating. So it makes you, even if you're a skeptic, to really pay attention to how signs can give you really good information about maybe the people that you're dating, maybe the stages in life that they are in. And in this particular stage this year has really been a kind of a shedding of old, because there is this certain, 7 year cycle. And in order to begin anew, we have to close a chapter. And so in closing chapters, there might be closing up in past relationships. I've had friendship breakups in the past year. I've had certain aspects of my business I've completely closed, which again, in order to end something, you're also beginning a new chapter, right? And you have more reverence for yourself that, all right, you're on the right path. You are doing what is meant in your karma and your dharma. And, is there a question of this free will? And I still think there is that question of free will. I think you are obviously able to still create your reality, but also knowing what season and stage of life that you're in. Like, I know this season and stage of life is embracing motherhood and being with my kids. And especially this year, I've had more of the itch to say no to more speaking engagements. I mean, I had a season for that. And what I'm embracing now is there are seasons. My slow season is the summer season, and my go hustling, go getter season is probably my fall and spring season. And for each of us, it could be different. But I feel like for mothers, especially if you're in this era, you have that call. And I was also able to read my chart that this year was that year for me, but I was also going to begin new projects. And when you are attuning to, the season and stage of life that you are in, whether you are an astrology person or a horoscope person or not, you can't deny that some of these things are pretty accurate. So, my question for you today is, knowing a lot of this information, would you be a skeptic? Or would diving into maybe understanding your chart, or knowing that there is another tool that can really help in understanding some of the seasons you've been through, whether it's astrology, Vedic astrology, and for me, how it's shifted even my relationship with my husband, is I will call one of my astrologers and I'll say, is this a good decision? And every business decision, it's always also vetted, because while there's free will, I also want to make sure that, am I doing this on the, in the right time frame? And for those of you who grew up with this, I know that there's seasons where it's like there are different days where you're not supposed to buy a car on this particular day, or you're not supposed to sign a document on this particular day. And some people might say that's superstition, or and for me, it's like there is that, but I also think that there is a reverence for the beauty in what has existed for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And Chinese numerology has this. We have different traditions around the world. I'm also a big fan of human design. We've had many guest experts teach this in our Highest Self Institute. And so recently, and we had somebody else on the podcast not too long ago, we had somebody talking about gene keys as well. And so I've been such a sucker for these types of things. It's kind of like the MBTI and some other personality tests out there, but you have your own astrological imprint as well that you can take into account and see, all right, are these relationships good for you? Are people coming into your world? What is that purpose for now? What are you meant to learn? And I think with all of these modalities, we are meant to just learn more and more about ourselves and really grow our capacity to feel, our capacity to hold, our capacity to be with discomfort, our capacity to hold stress and strain and overwhelm, but also alchemize it and process it so that we can be a stronger, more resilient, more compassionate, more loving, more joyful person at the end of the day. Yet to be able to brave these kinds of conversations, I know. Tell me in the comments below, what crazy thing have you tried? Because I'm a sucker for all kinds of things, spiritual biohacking, regular biohacking, and braving new modalities of healing. And me, I will introduce it to my family, my friends, my inner circle. And I'm curious to know how this is resonating with you. Have you ever gotten your horoscope done? Have you ever thought of getting your chart read? I'm sure there's all sorts of apps and things out there. There's many that I love, and I will link below some of the ways that you can get a hold of the recent podcast that I did with Deborah, but also some of her offerings, because I think that she's probably one of the best in the industry. She was doing this for about 35 years, and it's so wild. And she's worked with many, many, many celebrities, many people that you very much know, from athletes to musicians to songwriters to directors to A-list celebrities. And she's been their secret astrologer. And I think what's different is that she comes from that background of she's got the brain and she's got the heart. She's got the masculine and she's got the feminine. She's got the logic and she has, the science backing that merges into both worlds, so that you're almost blown away by how accurate some of her readings are. So if you're curious about that, I definitely encourage you to listen in. We actually do a masterclass together. And honestly, if you are a nerd like me and want to nerd out, I will also link the program that I did with her. And it was wild. So you can say I'm like astrologer 101. And so now I am the one that's doing this. Shout out to my dad. But I'm the one that's doing this for my family and my friends and some of my close friends, who I still have to look up certain things, but it's a really cool hobby. And so what are things that are lighting you up that you're like, I can stay up pretty much all night to do? And astrology is one of those things where I'm like, ooh, a new friend is dating somebody. Let me get the deets and let me just plug things up and see if things are aligning and what you're meant to learn from each other, because we are meant to grow in relationships. We are meant to grow in relationships. We are meant to have the most juiciest, deepest transformations in our most intimate relationships if we say yes to them. So cheers to you saying yes to your growth. being able to be open to something new, being able to be open to a new perspective. And I so want to know what you think. Tag me at the Brave Table, tag us at Neeta Bhushan. If you love this episode, if you're curious about it, if you want to share it with a friend, please go ahead and do so. We love, love, love when you share this with other people that can just be a little bit more brave. And thank you for tuning in week after week. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button or the follow button on YouTube and or Spotify. Please do so. It helps us grow the show more than you know. And I will be back next week with some more tea on the Brave Table. Don't forget to be just a little bit more brave.